Hello, everybody. As you know, the session's being recorded. So if you don't feel comfortable leaving your video camera on, you can turn it off. But obviously, we love to see your wonderful faces. Today, Molly is doing a lovely interactive session. So she would encourage you to say if you have any questions, and we will try and help and facilitate you with unmuting and getting your camera on if that's what you want, or you can put the questions in the chat and I will put them to Molly for you on your behalf. If you want them anonymous, just say, and I will happily put those questions to Molly anonymously. Like anonymous. And hopefully you'll enjoy today's session. I know I'm quite excited about the topic that Molly's got planned for us. So without further delay, I will hand over to Molly.
Oh, thank you very much. So I was this session has come out. I'd probably say a bit about myself, but this session has come out of, I think probably most of us find life really quite difficult sometimes, and home ed parenting is challenging, home ed is challenging, and then when you put a whole load of other things that as well, that can increase the challenges as well. So this has kind of been born out of quite a lot of personal experience, as I'm sure you all have as well. What I would have loved to have done is, if I'd been able to make up and we could have all met up together, and this is also for everybody listening in as well, I would have loved to have had this session sitting in some really comfy chairs with maybe some nice cushions and with some cups of tea and some cake and maybe some nice music, and just to be able to actually to look after ourselves, just to give like an hour of actually we're just going to input a little bit into ourselves. So acknowledging that we give out a lot and every so often we need to refill our own teacups. So obviously we're not doing that, but I do hope that some of us have got cups of tea, and if you're listening in now live, you may well be rushing around doing jobs at the same time, and if you're listening in afterwards, but I would encourage you that in the next 24 hours, just to sit down or to do something that you like to do. It might be going for a walk or going for a run or sitting down with a book or something that you really like, that in a sense fills your own soul a little bit. And just have time to think through some of the things that we have talked about today, because some of the things I find in most sessions there's kind of one or two things that particularly resonate. So that's kind of what I'm hoping that this will do. So kind of the other caveat, just to begin with, is that I acknowledge definitely that there may be some people who are listening to this, you may be listening afterwards, who are going through incredibly excruciatingly difficult times. The thing that comes to mind, particularly because I've got dear friends walking through this, is kids with severe mental illness and sort of teenagers. And all I can say is I just pray there'll be some things from this that you can take away with you. But most of all, just to encourage you, whoever you are doing just an amazing job, just simply standing. We underestimate standing and just getting out of bed each day and continuing with the huge challenges you face. You are just doing amazingly. So please just have some heartfelt encouragement. So we're going to talk a little bit about kind of what tough times are, the kind of tough times that we might be having, and then just some of the things that we can do to actually make those a little bit easier for ourselves. So first of all, as I was thinking about it, I kind of felt there we can divide them into two categories initially. So you have the really difficult times, but which are foreseeable, and then those difficult times which are unforeseeable. So the foreseeable ones, and then both of those we can put into things which are positive, even though they're difficult, and actually really hard and very unwelcome. So if we put into the foreseeable ones, the things that we can kind of plan, so that would be like having a new baby or welcoming a child by adoption or fostering, could be moving house, could be a job change, could be, I was listening to a podcast, one mum saying that she's got a book about to be published, and so that's a really positive thing, but she knows the next few months are going to be filled with huge amounts of stuff while this book's getting off the bookshelves. So so some of those can be positive, but it doesn't underestimate the fact that, I'm going to say, Ruth, with 7 little ones, I just can't imagine how absolutely exhausting that must have been. So that there are those. I think with the foreseeable ones, I talked to a group of mums just recently, and just asked, sort of younger mums than me, and just asked about kind of the things that they had. I lived and learned, yes. So these are some things that I would suggest that if you are going through times which you can foresee in the future that are going to be difficult, and you're going to have less time. So you can plan ahead for a certain amount. So, for example, if you have things like you're moving house or something, you have to think about the sorts of things which are important to you during that time. So, and the things that are not important. So it may be that with your home education that you simply you drop some of the maths and the English because those are the harder things, or it may be that actually you go completely off piste and you do wonderful wild projects, or it may be that actually you need that stability. If you've got a little baby and a little toddler, then actually you need that stability of those curriculum kind of things that are already all set to all good to go, and you can just get them out on the table, and every morning you start and you do your little bit of maths and your little bit of English, and that gives a bit of routine, and you've got those 2 boxes ticked. So it's very, very much, working it out kind of for you and for your season, how you do that. Unforeseeable things, when I thought about that, were things like illness. We can't foresee that's going to come. Real financial worries, which can put add a huge big amount of pressure. Problems for our children, those of us with children and with young adult children who are away from home. I recently am on a call quite regularly with a couple of other home educating mums, and while we both have children at home with additional needs, we also have adult children, and all our adult children have been going through real significant challenges this last year. And actually we've very much recognised that because we're really quite concerned about what our adult kids are going through, it very much impacts what we have to give for our little children, younger children still at home. We've only got a certain emotional capacity, and I think it's important to realise if it's being filled up with something else, that we have just less things to give. It's just acknowledging we only have capacity. Things like work stresses, relationship difficulties, death of a family member, close friend. So those are all what we learned a new word in lockdown. It was from a family book we were reading called vicissitude. So I don't know if anyone knows what vicissitude is, but it was a good one for 2020. It's an unforeseen and unwelcome circumstance, which I thought was great. So we talk about these vicissitudes. So so those are all vicissitudes or unwelcome things that we just haven't wanted, we can't do anything about, but we just kind of have to cope with them as we go. There are also, as we talked about the things that were planned that were positive, although difficult, there were also unforeseen things that can be positive as well. And the things I thought of were things like, sometimes it just so happens, doesn't it, that there just seem to be a lot of other things on. It could be birthdays, it could be just a lot of maybe homemade outings that all seem to be coming in one go. It could actually just be some nice weather that you just think, that gives us an opportunity to do a whole load of other things. So there can be really positive things that we kind of can have to change and adapt to, that we can't foresee but can change and adapt to, and those can be good. So I just wonder, before we kind of go on a little bit more to the kind of how we can adapt in various ways, are there any other things, because we've all got experience in different things, and it would be lovely, I love being able to kind of share from each other. Are there other things that that you found in your life that either foreseen or unforeseen circumstances, and how you've coped with those or not coped with them? I'll leave a pause anyway, whether anyone answers now or not. I'll just leave a pause anyway so that you can have a think. Yeah, Ruth said a house extension. Oh gosh, Ruth, how did you manage that? Can I ask how you managed that with all your tribe?
Yeah, well, sure. Well, the answer is that we didn't have all of them at the time. It was a very long time ago. But we did have 5, I think, at the time. And basically, we had to encamp to a caravan. We had a caravan, small caravan, a 5-berth caravan, decamped kind of 40 minutes away. And we spent, as the work got progressively more difficult and as they were digging foundations around both exits of the house, we had to just kind of stay there. And it's interesting because I remember taking some, it's a very long time ago now, but I remember taking some kind of worksheet type things to do, and we didn't do very much at all. I mean, they were quite young, but what they learnt surprised me at the time. I mean, they spent a lot of time, that the campsite that we were at was in the middle of the woods, so they were finding conkers, they were spotting birds, they were looking at ants' nests, they were finding fossils in the rocks that were in the path. I mean, the amount of learning that they learned to ride bikes. I mean, it's a fantastic time, and they all look back very fondly on those years. Yeah. So there was a lot of unexpected learning, like you say, there was opportunities. Yeah. But when we were here, the way that, I mean, I remember when this extension it was like a show, and I remember we had 3 or 4 chairs lined up, and this guy was just trying to do the plastering, and he just had this audience, they were just sat there watching him and asking him questions, but it was a really strong memory, and he loved it because nobody had ever taken any interest before in how he did his plastering. But they were talking about what it was made of, and he was telling them what not to do and what to do, and it all came out in artwork and pictures as well. So it was a really precious time, but it was a bit stretching as a parent, but but I look back on it now, and it was such a really good time. But at the time, it was a bit fraught at times, I have to admit.
Yeah, no, that's lovely, and absolutely. Have other people got things like that of times which have been really difficult, but actually, I think Ruth used the word opportunity, and I that really resonates with me and resonated with other mums as I've kind of talked to them. That actually, the things that can be difficult, we can actually see them as opportunities to do something differently. Has anyone else got other things like that?
You've muted there, Meg. Did you have something you wanted to add?
It's not really the same thing, but we moved house. Well, we didn't move house, but we used to live in an intentional community with loads of other families, loads of children, like off grid in the woods, like really beautiful lifestyle. And now we're in a really nice little cottage, but we lost that really amazing kind of support network, and that was hard. And I think knowing that I've wanted to home ed the whole way through, but losing that village almost, like that I had on my doorstep was quite it knocked me much more than I thought it was going to. Like, we still meet up and but just having them like next door, just literally my 2-year-old at the time would get out of bed, open our caravan door, walk across the field to her little mate's caravan, knock on the door, and that would be it for the day then. And
wow, yeah,
losing that has been really hard, and approaching school age now, she's nearly 5, not having what I thought we were going to have feels a bit scary.
I was going to say that's quite daunting. That must feel quite daunting, actually.
Yeah,
because it's not. Again, it sounds like it's not what you'd initially planned.
Yeah, I sort of thought we'd raise them all together, and they'd all just, learn in the woods, and it would all be fine, and we could just, as mums, kind of sit and watch, and we did do that the whole time. But now that we're not there anymore, that our day-to-day life doesn't look like that anymore.
So it's a lot of adapting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Have you found some things that have helped in that? Helped you with that?
We're trying to sort of get into groups, and we go to a really nice bushcrafty type outdoor sessions group, which is great because it's not like a kind of mainstream forest school where they're not allowed to light fires and stuff. Like, they can light the fires, they can climb the trees, they're not kind of limited because they're younger. Whereas we've been to others before, and because they're little, they've not been allowed to use like the knives and stuff, whereas this one they have got more, obviously safe and
Yeah.
supervised, but just a little bit more freedom, which suits them great, because you know they've been learning those skills since they learned to crawl. So that's been really nice. We are actually looking at another community, but hopefully to potentially move to again in the future. So we've got a few visits to them lined up in the summer. So I'm kind of thinking, oh, we'll be back there one day, like it's the end of our communal life. But it's there's things that I'm looking for, and I'm really enjoying just having the children around, and we're still really rural, and we've got all our animals and, you know, goats and everything. So we've still got a lot of the nice elements of the lifestyle. We just don't have the people as much.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that, Meg. That's because that is quite an upheaval. Moving house anywhere is an upheaval, isn't it? But moving from community to not community in that same way is, you know, adds a whole extra dimension, doesn't it? Yeah. Thank you. That's really helpful. So one of, I guess some of the things that I thought I'd just sort of share a few kind of stories of our own, of just kind of how I tried to adapt, and I haven't always adapted well, but the things that we could foresee and how we changed. So one of ours actually was a moving house as well, and it made me think actually we have had extensions as well, and we definitely, I was able to foresee that and so plan around that, but just the one that I remember, which was stressful, was moving house, and we had to do a lot of work on a new house, and we were and we kind of did all the move ourselves as well, so with lots of good friends, so it was quite arduous. And so I decided that I had two quite enthusiastic kids at that age, and then a younger one who was playing anyway most of the time. And so I decided we'd kind of forget all the periphery subjects. We'd kind of do the maths and English, and then we wouldn't do all the other things we normally did. We'd just pile them all together and do one big, we'd been reading all the Laura Ingalls Wilder books, and we'd just do one big project about America. And so we spent a whole of the summer term doing this big project about America. And I remember sitting in, you know, grass up to here in our new house, sitting on the floor, you know, trying to find a place for a picnic. And we'd be reading, you know, read aloud to them. And we went to a visited American museum because it's quite near to us, and we cooked on a Dutch oven, and we did all sorts of really fun things. And actually, again, it's amazing how the memory works. But actually, we collated these great, lovely big folders. And I remember those times, actually that time, it was quite short, it was only a couple of months, as a really, really lovely season. And I don't remember all the dust and all the moving and all the rest of it. What I remember is this lovely American project that we did. So I think it's kind of seeing the opportunities and being able to adapt. And it was just lovely. It was really fun. Another more difficult one, but again, I remember back, and I remember the opportunities, in a sense, the sweetness of it, is when we adopted our fourth child. So not all of them adopted, but our fourth child was adopted. And she was 3 years old, quite traumatized, got quite a lot of sort of significant additional needs. And our eldest son was doing GCSEs, just started GCSEs. The second one is dyslexic, so he was kind of doing something different. The third one was just playing a lot. And then this new little lass who was really struggling with all sorts of things. And actually up until then, I'd kind of been teaching the boys together because they're fairly close in age, but because the older one was just started doing GCSEs, he was doing something different. So it was all kind of having been quite cohesive. It was suddenly like 4 children all doing different things and needing different things. And so the things that I let go of at that time actually were food. So I tend to be somebody who quite likes to, you know, I'm quite careful. Well, I tend to be, I like to home cook and things. I don't always like. I don't like to home cook, but I do try to home cook. And actually, I just thought I just can't do that. So I think they were probably almost malnourished. We probably ate a huge amount of baked beans and gallons of baked potatoes. And you know, and I kind of thought if there was just a pair of boxer shorts, didn't matter which boy it belonged to, they could just wear it. You know, if I could just churn the laundry out. So you know, so it was a lot of the real basic things in that time, the home things. Just I went for as simple as possible and just went to pot. but because I thought actually at that time the most important thing is actually the bonding, bringing a new child in, and we actually needed to bond all of us together, because we had various other difficult things going on within our family at that time as well. So, and sort of from outside things, and also the oldest son's GCSE. So that was sort of the academic thing I was focusing on, and then other than that it was just bonding, and we did do a lot of fun things. So again, I look at those years now, those 3 years, and I just kind of seem to remember an awful lot of just piling into the van and going places and having picnics and being out and about. So although it was really difficult, but I think we can often kind of find memory is a great thing, isn't it? But I think we can often we can look back and see that actually there are some there were some good things. What was that? Reassuring we don't have to do it all in one go. Or
Sandri's got her hand up, if that's okay.
Oh yes, please.
Would you like to unmute there, Sandri?
Yeah, I was just saying it's reassuring, it is reassuring to hear other people say we don't have to do it all of the time. I'm often kind of like thinking, what can I let go of today or this week, because I just can't do it all. And sometimes it's home cooking. Sometimes we have to, improvise in other ways. Sometimes it's the piles of laundry in the utility room. And I just think, well, it's okay, that can wait, till next week. Or sometimes, I don't know, even sometimes it's without sometimes it is even the kind of the educational things. It's like kind of what educational things or what learning can my children do without that is a bit easier on me or my time or my energy, so they could still be doing something really amazing, but that just doesn't. As I remember when I trained to be a teacher in a past life, and I remember my tutor saying to me, "You can't make every lesson." And especially I was a science teacher as well, so it was all very hands-on. But and intense. You can't make every lesson an Ofsted lesson because you'll burn out. There's that kind of thing, isn't it? So sometimes you just have to choose in one area or another, or several areas, the path of least resistance sort of thing. But what I was going to say was the thing about change being interesting sometimes. And so listening to the lady who's saying about is it Meg saying about that she lived in a wonderful community, and it's not really comparable with that. I don't think what I'm going to share, because that sounds amazing. But every summer I'm half French, and every summer I take my girls to the south of France to spend time in a small village community. We spend at least 2 months there usually, sort of all of July and August, sometimes a bit longer. But this year, for a number of reasons that are really out of my control, to do with the property that we stay in is being renovated. We've got issues of ill health within the family, things that you just can't be helped. I'm not going to be able to take them this summer, and the girls are just gutted. They're just really, really gutted, really upset. And I've tried to explain to them, I'm really sorry, it's just not much I can do about it, I'm afraid, this year. And unfortunately, it's coincided with my husband being unemployed. He has, in fact, been unemployed since November, and hasn't been able to get another job yet. So, it's that kind of when, when you get that kind of situation, you can't necessarily do. So at first I was thinking, oh, that's okay, because maybe we can, you know, we can make the most of the summer here and do days out. Well, you know, trips, and, you know, we can go and visit, I don't know, Warwick Castle, or which is really expensive, or wherever else that is also really expensive. We can do all these amazing day trips that we never really get the opportunity to do in the summer because we're never here. And now I'm thinking, oh, well, that's going to be interesting, because actually we're going to have to spend the summer on a, you know, on a very tight budget, on a shoestring budget. And I've got two very disappointed girls because they're not going to get their usual summer of playing in the river and in the mountains. You know what I mean? In the Alps. And so I'm having to kind of think of, you know, I don't want to sound, I don't know, ungrateful for what I have, because I am very grateful for what I have and for what we have. But you have to kind of use your imagination a bit, I suppose, to kind of create something else positive out of a different situation that you find yourself in, you know.
Yeah. Gosh, that sounds, thank you for sharing that. That sounds like you've got a whole load of things happening in your life. It sounds like you're having lots of unexpected things slung at you.
Yeah, they're not, you know, they're just, each thing on their own isn't on its own.
Yeah, all interconnects.
You know, it's just everything happening together, and it's nothing terrible or catastrophic or anything. But it just means having to reframe, you know, what home education means. And of course, you know, you can't, when you home educate, you don't just kind of stop for the summer, so to speak, do you? You kind of, it just doesn't work like that, you know.
Yeah.
So
yeah, thank you. Yeah, so something you raised, which I thought was really good, just worth reiterating. You know, it is when unexpected things happen, you know, like your husband loses a job, or, you know, all the other things you talked about. It is a lot of it is, once we've accepted it, it's kind of having to be creative, isn't it, and work out different things and different ways around it. And how can you make, you've got a summer in the UK now, how can we make that summer? And it's not surprising your girls are disappointed. And you've then got the challenge of being able to having to do it on a bit of a budget. So what can you do? It's finding different things to do, isn't it? And it is, it's having to be creative in that way, isn't it?
we will find things to
and you
do.
will.
So, you know, we will.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not, I don't want to sound like I'm complaining, as I say, but it's just one of those kind of situations.
Yeah, it's just different and unexpected, and it's trying to find a way around it, isn't it? A creative way around it. Yeah.
It's also difficult when you've got, one of my daughters is autistic, and she just can't, you know, she just doesn't cope very well with things being different to what they normally are, you know. So it's, you know, it's just it's a challenge, but it's okay. We'll find a way forward.
Through it. Yeah. Oh, well done. I know you will find a way through it. You will too. You will.
One of the things we did when we were in a new area was we got Google Maps, we printed it out, and then we went on that website I was just mentioning, Days Out with the Kids, and we listed everything that was there, and we put it on the map, and then we went through the pros and cons of each. And you might find that there are a lot of free things that mean that you can afford the more expensive ones, like Warwick Castle. You might find a lot of free ones that are like the French Alps in some way. I can't think of exactly the French Alps because that is a bit difficult in the middle of.
Let me know if you find something.
But you might be able to find something. I know that there's a just from speaking to locals, that there's a brook down the road with a ford, and all the kids go there when it gets warm. All the kids go there and they just run around in the water. And it's such an experience to be able to find those little gems near you. The only way you're going to find them is to ask and to look. So yeah, stay positive on that one, Sandrine.
Oh,
Something will crop up.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
a little bit. It's a you know, it's a challenge that I shall look forward to.
Yeah, good for you.
Well, you
Well
know,
done.
I'm
Yeah.
approaching it in a really positive way.
Yeah. And I think something else that you raised, which was I thought was good. I think you said something about not every lesson can be an Ofsted, and I think that that's really important as we home educate. Thank you for saying that. I think that's really important as we home educate our kids, that actually we're in it for the long term. And so if we have a term or 2 terms or 3 terms, or actually probably a couple of years like we had, with doing absolutely zero maths with one of our daughters because emotionally she just couldn't cope with it because she doesn't like it. And now it's like, well, okay, then we're reaching GCSE stage, let's get a functional skills book out, let's just have a go. And actually she's plodding through it fine, having had done virtually no maths for, well, at least 2 years. So I think we can see these times in our lives which are difficult, and we can let go of some of the academic things, and it may well be that actually we need to keep those because those give the routine and that's what our kids like. But actually some others of our kids might find that actually it's too stressful, and so it's better just to be able to let go of those and just to have lots of read alouds and lots of morning times together and lots of art study and that sort of thing. So I think we really, really can adapt around our children, and you know, and in the long term, sort of 16, 18 years, however long, you know, they're at home for, and then even post then, because they still continue educating, don't they? They will, you know, that it will all balance out in the future. We can't have ACE 1 lessons the whole time. We have to see the long term. So I think one analogy that I find really helpful is something called the plimsoll line. I don't know if any of you know what the plimsoll line is. In boats, it was a politician, I think, from Bristol in the 19th century, 1800s, somebody other Plimsoll, Samuel Plimsoll, who decided that they needed, that lots of ships were kind of sinking at sea, and it's because they were piling too much cargo into them, and so he got a line painted around the hull of the boats, and they weren't allowed to have more than that in it before they left the harbour. And I think that's a really helpful analogy, kind of on 2 levels really. On our physical level, you know, if we have just too much overload, too many things going on, that actually we've only got a certain capacity, and we can't compare ourselves with other people either, because each of us have our own capacity, and then each of us have our own family situations. And so, for example, because our youngest daughter's got quite a lot of special needs, I can't compare what friends of hers might be doing with their days and rushing around here, then everywhere, and doing all sorts of fun things with what she's doing, because actually she couldn't cope with that. So I think that's really, really useful, knowing where our plimsoll line is, and then actually listening to our bodies. If we're overloaded, you know, and we know what our signs of stress are in our own bodies, and actually starting to be a bit more in tune with listening, and actually saying, gosh, you know, I'm getting hot flushes, or I'm getting really stressed out, or I'm biting my nails, or I am, whatever it is, whatever our signs, and actually listening to that, you know, being kind to our own selves and saying, you know, I'm getting overloaded here, something needs to go out. So I think there's the physical thing, and then there is also, as I kind of alluded to a bit earlier, the emotional as well. We only have a certain amount of emotional capacity, and if we have, just as I was saying, you know, earlier on with this group of 2 other mums who had older children, if we're really worried about another situation, about other situations, then actually we can't just switch off. Our home education, it's all encompassing. It's not like going to a job, and you kind of, I just know because of one of the other jobs I have, and I know however difficult everything else is, I know I've got, you know, these 2.5 hours, and I switch off, I just go for that. And it doesn't involve my emotions, it just involves my brain, and I can kind of just do that. Whereas the home ed, I can't just say, well, I've got 2.5 hours to teach you. It doesn't matter how I feel, I can just switch off, because it's all encompassing. So I think it's just acknowledging that if we have a lot of things, if we have a lot of things that that are going on in our lives, that actually we just have to acknowledge that and be kind to ourselves, and maybe slack off on some other things. Just had a comment that fear of missing out is very real, and that's very true, especially with social media. That was another thing I was going to say, is during times, actually I'm going to remind me about that, because that was something I was going to bring later on, actually. So thank you. You're ahead of the game. So another thing about kind of how can we cope as well as possible with things which are unforeseen, and actually possibly long term, as well as we put into long-term challenges. So there are some things which happen, like house moves, or we've said some of those things, can't remember which are kind of unforeseen illnesses, but we'll get better kind of thing. But there's other things which actually are long-term challenges, which actually, extensions, yes, which are long-term, and they're actually not going to change. So for myself, I've kind of put things like parental ill health, either one or other parents got parental illness, children with additional needs, difficult work or financial situations, single parenting, or actually also, which often doesn't get talked about much, is marriages, partnerships, where one of the spouse, one partner is simply, for very good reasons, isn't able to input into the family situation as much as the other one. It could be due to mental health, kind of chronic fatigue. It could be due to incredibly stressful work situations. But you kind of have some families where mum and dad both just seem to pile in and do it all together, and I think that's absolutely wonderful, and I'm sure that's the ideal. But we don't live in an ideal world, so I just kind of want to acknowledge that there are things. Thank you. That there are things for that there are other things that can go on within families, which actually can increase the amount of your capacity. And I think it's important to acknowledge those things, because once we've acknowledged, it then leads me on to the next thing, which it then gives us permission to change. And I think this is really important. We acknowledge we've got a difficult situation, and we resist piling on the guilt. And part of that is social media, looking at other people and saying, gosh, well, they're doing this artist study, and they're doing this day out, and they're doing this. Remember, we only put the nice things on Instagram, and she's making her sourdough, and we kind of put all these things on. But actually, we need to go on this, friends. But I think we probably all have. But we have to resist piling on the guilt, because we've got our own individual set of circumstances and our own individual, and we're nobody that we're not accountable. Because I'm a Christian, I'm accountable to God, but other than that, there's nobody I'm particularly accountable. I don't have to be accountable to Instagram or to anybody else for the fact that actually the laundry is piled up high for days. Or that I wake up in the morning feeling completely overwhelmed and near to tears before I've even started the day, and I think I'm quite sure I'm not the only one that quite often can have days when it feels too overwhelming even before anybody else is up. So so we know our principal level, we resist putting on guilt, and then I think we acknowledge the situation, we acknowledge it's hard. And then I think that gives us permission to be able to change, and to say, actually, I'm not going to do this. In this season, actually, my kids are just all going to eat baked beans and chips an awful lot, and we're going to have pizzas every day. Or there may be kind of longer term things that, like, for example, for a long time, we always have, much as I like to give my kids nice meals, but we always have fish and chips out the oven on a Tuesday night, and we always do that. And we generally watch something on the TV while we do that. We sit at the table and we have the iPad or the computer So we're watching Jeremy Clarkson's Farm at the moment. And that kind of started as a tradition, I think, because they had music lessons. But it's really nice on a Tuesday. I just don't have to think, because I know there's fish, chips and peas, really easy. And then on Friday night also we have pizza. So we have, so does he? Oh, Jeremy Clarkson lives near to you. and I'd love to go to his shop one day. And on Friday we have pizza. So again, that's 2 meals that kind of long term, I said, actually forget what if we don't eat that well those nights, that's just what we have. And actually that's really nice to have 2 nights of the week when I don't have to think about food. So yeah, so anyway, so we've acknowledged it. I think also by acknowledging and accepting situations, I think actually that can give us freedom to move on. Our thing is to skip the dishes. That's great. Thank you. Very good. Yeah, and I think we all need those, don't we?
They're not going to grow legs overnight. So if you do it just for one night, you give yourself that break.
Yeah. Really, really important. Thank you. Definitely. And I think if we can do this, then we can then actually find freedom in being able to do things differently and just say, well, actually, so for the example is, I was thinking of one of the things is our littlest daughter, who has a lot of additional needs, and I think for years I kind of tried, I thought, well, well, she's 6, she's 7, she's 8, she should be able to do all these things, and all her friends are doing all these things. And it's only actually as I finally, and I don't know what it took me so long, but finally got to realizing, accepting that actually she is who she is, and she's delightful as she is, and she is going to take time in developing and growing in her own time. And actually that means that we spend a lot more time in the garden, and we spend a lot more time kind of home based, because actually although she likes going out, she does find it quite stressful, and it can be stressful just simply getting shoes on, we have to adapt an awful lot of things. And it kind of like an example of why I didn't do it particularly well, but because I was then kind of realised what situation, and I've been able to adapt. So because it's our 25th wedding anniversary, so we're going away this weekend, which is very exciting, which means that my sister-in-law and my mum are both coming for one night each to look after the 2 younger girls, because my son's living away from home. And she is, the littlest one, is really, she's been worried about this for months and months and months. And this week I have, we tend to do our learning in the morning, and I do other work or anything, other things I need to do in the afternoon. And I just have not been able to get her to concentrate at all. And I've become really frustrated with that. Like, this is, you've got the morning, you've got me for the whole morning. This is our time. Please, you can't read yet. Please, let's just sit. You'll never learn to read if you can't sit still and just sit and try and read with me just in one page. And I can feel the tension in me rising. And then it suddenly cottoned on kind of Tuesday, at the end of the Tuesday afternoon. I think it's because she cried and cried and cried. I had to take her in the car somewhere. She came and did some jobs with me, and she just cried and said, it was obviously she's so worried about us going away. And so the next day we just said, okay, well, let's go and plant out those seedlings that we've had in the polytunnel. Let's just go and plant them out. And today we went and planted out some onions and tried to dig up a load of bindweed, and she was just dug and dug and dug this great big weed out. And she said, when I'm stressed, Mummy, all I can do is dig holes. And she dug this massive great big hole and got down to a clay layer. There was sandstone, they've got clay and then sandstone. And she said, is this science? And I said, well, it is actually. So then we talked all about rocks and things. So it's kind of being able to find, so, that's something I didn't do well at the beginning of the week at all. But actually, as I kind of realised that this is what it is, there's nothing I can do to change it. And so actually, let's just go with it. And we found, I would never have got those seedlings planted out otherwise, let's just go with it. So I think it's being able to give ourselves freedom when things are difficult, to be able to change. And then is to do any of those things just before we pile on to the last things, just looking after ourselves. We've got about 15 more minutes. Is there anything that particularly from that bit kind of resonates with anybody?
Yeah, I was just thinking, it was just when you've got a child, and one of my daughters gets like that, she just can't cope with change or anything unusual going on. it's just really counterproductive to do her, you know, anything that she would perceive as, you know, difficult for her. You know, so it's a bit like that your daughter not wanting to sit down and do some reading. I mean, for her it's maths, and for me it's like, you're 12 and you can't tell the time yet, you know.
Oh yeah, I've got that one.
Yeah. I'm just like, you know, but it's just not worth it.
It's
you know,
not.
it's
And
really
actually, if I thank you so much for bringing that up, I put a plug in. If anybody hasn't listened to, Anne Law has done a talk on sensory processing and home education sensory processing. So do check her talk out. I think another thing that's really, I find really helpful to do when things are difficult and when I'm feeling that my home ed is just falling and looking around, everybody else is doing all these wonderful things and we're, you know, barely ticking along doing anything, is actually just to re-examine our whys. You know, why am I doing this? Is it because I want my kids to all to be superstar academics, which they may well be, or is it for other things? And actually, for me, this is going to be different for all of us, but I mean, some people write down an educational philosophy at some stage during their home ed journey and add to it. I've never done that, but I have in my mind actually kind of written down just, you know, why are we doing this? So for me, the most important things, because I have a Christian faith, is I give my kids, you know, the opportunity to be able to have a faith, to grow in that, and then also relationships kind of alongside that. And most importantly is their relationships, a relationship with us, with a relationship with each other, to be able to give them good foundations, to be able to have relationships with other people, with other friendships, with work colleagues. They get older. So actually, and kind of tied with that is all the character, you know, that they grow up to be kind, and they do have integrity, and they grow up to be able to be compassionate for other people, and to be able to stand up and speak out if they see something which is wrong. You know, it's all those things which are important. And sometimes our older teen daughter, who is going through a lot of things that teenagers do, and there are a lot of things which I think, gosh, you know, we're not doing very much academic at all, and yet then she'll come out with something and she'll say, oh, I wanted to have a chat with this guy who was sitting on the street, you know, and I gave him a pasty and I had a bit of a chat with him, and it was just like, oh, you know, that is so much better than any amount of, you know, forget the GCSE maths, you know, it's those kind of things which actually warm my heart. So I think it's really taking the long term and looking, what are we doing? And this can, if we have very challenging situations or long term, particularly children with special needs, long term situations, then it's hard to put our money where our mouths are. So with kind of my older kids, you know, I could say, well, you know, relationships and character are really important in life skills, because as well as that, we could also do all the academic stuff and the sport and the music and, you know, all the other things. So I could, you know, say it quite nicely. But actually with my younger two, particularly my very youngest one, you know, we really are down to, well, actually what's the most important? The most important actually is my relationship with her. And actually, to be honest, with the rocky teenage years for my older daughter, actually other things have to go. And if it means that that's going to keep her mental health and my relationship with her, then actually that's why we just scrapped maths for 2 years, because it just wasn't worth it. And so I think it really is looking at what's important, what is really important to us, and if other things have to go, and if that means that to get our children through their teenage years in a way where their mental health doesn't suffer, which because of the huge problems that so many of our kids are facing at the moment, then I'm happy to say, right, that's fine, we'll just scrap GCSEs. They can do that later. We can, you know, tick those boxes. Most importantly is I want to get them through whole and happy and balanced people, you know, by the time they're 16, 17. And there are always other ways of educating. There always are. My kids have all done it in different ways. So to really encourage you, if you've got younger children, you know, put those foundations in when they're young, and enjoy all those outdoor times and all those fun times, because actually that's what gives you the foundations for the teen years. And then you know, you can then kind of go from there. So most importantly, just know why you're doing this in your heart. Whizzing through, the kind of the obvious things also, but we know it, but we're so bad at doing it. It's just looking after our physical selves, our physical, emotional, spiritual selves. You know, however we are, we're whole beings, aren't we? And things like diet, exercise, time in nature, having a quiet time. For me, having a time in the morning before the kids get up, and when the kids were very little, I would just kind of sit with a cup of tea and they'd kind of be playing in their pajamas. But so I've got teenagers now, they don't get up too early, so it's much easier to be up before they are. Doing something creative. I don't know if any of you are creative, but, you know, doing something that creates is good. Having days out by ourselves. If we can have time with other mums, and I know especially when you have little children, that's often very difficult to have time thank you. It's often very difficult to have time by yourself. But I did learn, and I definitely found ways that I could have time for myself, but with my kids when my kids were there. So, you know, for those of you who have little children, actually things like being able, on a sunny day, being able to go to the park, and once they're gone beyond that stage of needing to needing help on all the swings and slides, that actually you really can sit there with a book or your flask of tea or whatever, and the kids can play. And I did a lot of that when ours were kind of in that junior school kind of ages. Doing it. And then I don't know if people have kind of homemade co-ops or homemade groups or things like that, and trying within that just to be able to connect with other mums, because I think that can be really helpful in a real way. I think social media is great for getting ideas, and certainly I've made friendships and connections on social media with the homemade community, which is just lovely, and I've really appreciated that. But actually we also need those kind of kitchen table discussions, you know, those ones where we can just say, I'm just having a really awful time, and actually I'm just really struggling. I have one friend who I try and meet up with. She's got 3 girls and I've got 2, and we all our children, all our those 5 girls, all adopted, and we all homeschool as well, and they've all got a medley of other different things as well, and we try and meet up twice a term somewhere, and the girls play and we talk, and that's one of those, she was a real answer to prayer. That's one of those real soul friendships that we get straight in, how are you, and we can say it, you know, all, you know, nothing but nothing's bad kind of thing. And I think home ed can be lonely, and it has been lonely for me over the years, because you're walking a different path and not everybody understands. A lot of people don't understand. So I think it is really trying to find just 2 or 3 of those kind of soul friendships, those connections, like obviously, you know, Meg, you had in community, that you can have, because I think that really helps. 5 more minutes. Finding beauty. I think then we come to, you know, when we've accepted it's difficult, we've given ourselves permission to let go of things, we found some freedom in being able to do something differently and enjoy doing something, you know, that life is just different, but it's new opportunities, it's a new way of doing things. I think then we're able to start seeing beauty in what we in the life that we have. For me, we also do live in the countryside, but even when I didn't, I've lived in the city, I always would go and find a park somewhere to go and walk in. Just going and finding, and it's good for you, the colours are good, the greens and the blues, or even the greys. It's actually good. Bird song, it's good for our mental health. So finding beauty, you know, as you walk along the road, just have a look, you know, you can, I think it's a Charlotte Mason thing, I can't remember who it is, it might not be actually. You kind of you look down and you just see what you can see. It might be a dandelion coming through a pavement, and you think, gosh, that's got such tenacity, it's managed to come up through, you know, crack in the pavement, that's got such tenacity. Now I want to have that tenacity. Or you might, you know, just see some really beautiful flowers, and it just, you know, just makes you feel happy just seeing that beautiful. I was just looking at some little speedwell flowers the other day, and they're beautiful. And then looking up, and you can do this where you don't have to live in the countryside to be able to do this. So you look down and then you look up, and look up and see, you know, see the sky, see the clouds, and maybe a bit of cloud gazing. Probably most of us did during that 2020 year, and I got COVID, and I was just so tired afterwards, and I really did do quite a lot of time cloud gazing, because I didn't actually have the energy to do anything else. So sorry, that's my family coming home. And I'm just going to, sorry, excuse me now, I'm just going to turn and close the door. So looking down. Thank you very much. Thank you, Amy. Yeah, looking down and looking up. I was writing an article for the other job I do, and about the night sky, and actually it's really good apparently for mental health, and I can believe that, looking up at the night sky. So just go somewhere, even where you are, just go up and just look at the stars, and it kind of gives you perspective, isn't it, where you just see that amazing, just the vastness of it. Yeah, so finding beauty in the everyday, make yourself a cup of tea, make yourself some cake, do some of those things, have a bath at the end of the week. Friday night, I quite often, I don't always now, but for years, on a Friday night, when all the kids have had their pizza, so I don't have to do any more cooking, and I have a bubble bath and a glass of wine and a candle, and I listen to a Sally Clarkson podcast. And that just kind of helps to, just like, oh, that fills me up a little bit. And then the last thing is actually, with the difficult times, we do grow in strength in difficult times, and they are hard, they are stretching times, just as both my sons work out at the gym, and I think for your muscles to grow, they actually kind of have to break and then regrow, and that's how they get stronger. And I kind of feel often that can be the same for us emotionally. We feel like we're breaking sometimes. Things are so difficult, we feel like we're breaking, but actually it's in that breaking and then that growing back again that we can become stronger. And I think for our children, I think it's one of the joys, the positives about home educating when we go through difficult times is our kids walk with us through these. It really made me think the other day, one of our good friend and neighbour died sadly, and they're a very together family. They dealt with it brilliantly. But actually the granddaughter was at school and had SATs, and it just made me think it was just hard because they couldn't completely do it as a family. Whereas I know when things have been difficult for us, although it's hard doing it, you don't have any space, but actually you do work through things together and you walk through it together. And I kind of feel that actually they talk about this old, the generation of our younger kid, of our older kids, it's the snowflake generation that they just can't stand. And yet actually I've seen our son's cohort, son of young men and women in their kind of early 20s, and several of them, increasing numbers of them, are going through really, really difficult times. And they are so rooted. They're definitely, they are not snowflakes. I cry for them and I cry out for them in prayer. But they are amazing. They're completely standing strong. And I'm sure, part of that, I would hope, is the fact that actually they've all been through difficult times in their families and they've walked through it. They've seen their parents have difficult times. They've seen mum apologise because she's lost the plot. They've seen all the ways we've done the bad choices we've made as well as the good choices we've made. And they've seen how we've worked through it. So if you're going through difficult times, these are stretching times. They will, I believe, be preparing both you and also your children to be able to stand strong in difficult times in the future. And home ed doesn't mean that we're going to have easy times now or in the future, but I can only look at my son's our boys' generation and just see this cohort of young people, just to encourage you, keep going. It is really hard. It means you don't have the space. It's hard, but keep going, because I think you will see in the long run, your kids will be able to stand firm. So keep looking after yourselves and keep trying to do, in the next 24 hours, just try and do something which will, in a sense, fill your own teacup, fill your own soul a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was lovely, Molly. Thank you.
Can I just give a plug for our book just before I finish? Is that all right? I don't know if any of you, it's going to be a long way round, isn't it? If any of you have come across this, how do I make it? It's another way to say.
That's the right way round.
Is that the right way around for you?
Yep.
Oh, good. Cool.
Is it on Amazon?
It is on Amazon. There's also, if you go to the resources exhibitors bit on Learn Free, our publisher has given a 20% discount just for Learn Free.
Amy's read it and she says she absolutely loved it. There you go.
Oh, who was that?
So
Who read it?
you can get a better review than that. There you go.
Who was that? Who read it?
Amy.
Oh, really? Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm really glad. It's written by actually Ruth Barber, who is here, and Juliet's written a chapter, and Anne Law, who is here, about she's written a chapter on special needs. So it's basically UK, because I just felt that a lot of our resources came from the States, which is fantastic, but I just really wanted to get something for the UK. So we've got a good website. So have you go on the resources, the exhibitors page, there will be something where you can click on for our website, Another Way to Learn website, and there's lots of different things about the various different chapters. We cover lots of different things. We've tried to do some of the grittier things as well. And I also, if anybody's interested, I also myself and a friend co-host a podcast called Mended Teacups Homemade Podcast. We've been a bit slow on it recently, actually, because we've both been going through difficult times, but also the exciting coming out of that is an opportunity that we're actually kind of going to reshape and kind of change slightly. So that's something also that's come out of both of us really having empty teacups, not much left to give, but actually that has opened up a new opportunity. So that will be changing. So there's some exciting things happening coming up there, but there are lots of good, they're only about 15-20 minutes long, and there's lots of kind of practical advice on home ed. And the last thing is also do blog as well. I'm mothering through the seasons, so and I blog there as well. Thank you. Don't forget community group. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And I'll put a link to the book on Amazon on your thread on the community group as well, so people can find that easily.
If we're coming tomorrow, are there any hard copies tomorrow? Do you know? Just because I'm really rubbish at ordering stuff online, but I will order online.
No, because I'm not coming. I'm really sorry. Yeah,
no,
I'm
that's
really
fine.
sorry.
No,
Yeah. Oh, it's
at all.
great. Oh, what a shame. I would have loved to have come.
What's the name of your website so that I don't have to use Amazon?
Okay, no, that's fine. So the book's website,
Yeah,
where you get the discount, is Another Way to Learn book, I think.
great.
But if you go on to Learn Free, if you go onto the exhibitors page, it's there, and there's a link to the website.
Oh, perfect.
Then,
Thank you.
and actually on the website, which Lady Philippa did, so I think she's done it beautifully. I think it's lovely, and there's also links to various other different resources. Actually, I think our podcast and my blog is on there as well. So she's put quite a few other different kind of UK resources on there.